The 100 Years' War by Lucas Duckworth. The year is 1337. Negotiations between the two greatest powers of Western Europe, England and France, of course, have broken down. This will start one of the largest conflicts in history, as we know it today, the 100 Years' War. How did this war happen? Why did it happen? And how does it affect us today? To understand why the conflict happened and how it happened, we need to discuss the geography. The main portion of geography we'll be discussing today is the English Channel. The English Channel is a small body of water that separates the British Isles from the rest of Europe. At the two landmasses' nearest point, which is the town of Calais, it's only separated by 21 miles. This body of water would effectively isolate England from the rest of Europe. Another geographical feature that played an important role in the 100 Years' War was the French Alps. These huge mountains would stop manpower from the southern regions of France to reach the northern regions. Now we have to understand how the war started. Two main factors lie in the tensions between the nations. The first being Guyenne, a portion of France located about here. The reason why this land caused tensions is because both powers, France and England, claimed it. You can still see these sort of land disputes going on in the modern world. For example, Taiwan and China, and Israel and Palestine. The next factor that caused tensions between the two nations was the ownership of the French crown. And you can see my beautiful crown there. Originally, England dropped the claim, saying it was an unnecessary tension causer. But when the French supported the Scots in the English-Scottish War, they renewed their claim, thus starting one of the longest wars in recorded history. The first land battle of the 100 Years' War was the Battle of Crécy, which was in 1337. Here is a picture of what the battle may have looked like. Let me go ahead and expand it to make it easier to view. As you can see, the English flag in the top right corner, right over here. And you can also see a few other house flags. Moving on, this battle was a huge English victory, since it's the first battle and severely lowered the French morale. At the start of this battle, the English had much fewer troops, but using superior tactics and mobile archers, they were able to defeat the much larger French force. More battles would turn out this way, an English win and a French loss, such as Agincourt, and also Poitiers, or however you pronounce that. Historians divide the 100 Years' War into 3 sections. These sections are the Edwardian War, the Caroline War, and the Lancastrian War. As we can see from this crude diagram, the 100 Years' War was not just one war, but rather multiple wars fought over the same reasons between the two same countries. Overall, the war was 116 years, making it the longest war in recorded history. The 100 Years' War was in England's favor until 1429. After this date, the French started to turn the tide, slowly overcoming the English. The major battles that the French won that would raise their morale and prestige include the Battle of Patay in 1429, the Battle of Formigny, and this is how you spell that, in 1440. The next and final, most important battle for the French at this time was Castilium. Let me show you how to spell that. In 1453. The period that all of these battles belong to is when French morale and nationalism exploded and all of their troops started to occupy the English territory in mainland Europe. At one point in the war, there was more than just two sides. There was a new enemy approaching the battlefield. It was small and deadly. This disease, a crude representation of a flea that I'm drawing, was called the Black Death. The disease came from Genoan trade ships traveling to mainland Europe. They came from the area we know today as Crimea. The Black Death, shown on the picture right here, was so deadly it stopped the 100 Years' War for about 10 years. No side could send troops against each other, as they would either die on the way, or when they arrived, they would all be demoralized and sick. At the end of the medieval outbreak, 1/3 of Europe, estimated, had died from the disease. At one point in the war, a new symbol of French nationalism was rising through the dust that the English left behind in the French countryside. A lady we know today as Joan of Arc claimed she heard voices from God telling her to save France from the English. Some legends even say she could tell the future from these visions. Joan of Arc's first, and perhaps most widely known achievement, was to raise the siege of Orleans from the English. She did this through marvelous leadership and tactics. Eventually, she would be captured by the English and the Burgundians, and be executed later on, though her legacy would live on and inspire French nationalism for ages to come. One of the lasting effects of the 100 Years' War was the new pan-nationalism that swept across England and France. In French areas, people no longer identified with their local area, but rather their whole culture and nation as a whole. This renewed sense of nationalism would come to define France for ages, and also redefine their borders. The next long-lasting effect of the 100 Years' War was the strengthening of central governments, at least in Western Europe. By the end of the 100 Years' War, the French king had absolute power over all of the government. No longer did local lords have any power, as they were either abolished or were just figureheads for the king. This allowed a steady supply of troops, income, and advisors to the king, strengthening the central nation. Soon all European nation-states followed this form of governing, that is, until the late 19th century. Another effect of the 100 Years' War was the renewed importance of workers' rights. This is symbolized by the hammer on the left. Before the war, people would work long, hard, and overall low-paying jobs. Over the course of war, these rights would change tremendously. This happened because over the course of the war, nobles became much less powerful. This led to people demanding more rights, such as more pay and less laborious jobs. Today, though we don't think about it that much as we kids don't have jobs, workers' rights still play a huge role in politics and personal life. The 100 Years' War is not a very well-known war, but I say it still affects the world as we know it more than we think.